Welcome to Fred the Show. It is August and we are getting close to finally football season, more specifically high school football season. It is back again, but we're not going to talk about so much what's going to happen on the field. We're going to talk about the tales from the high school red zone. 7 News Sports Director Pete Yanity is here. We used to do this Friday nights long ago. By the way, I was just thinking, is this 35 years for you here, your 35th football season?
This is technically, I got here right at the end of the 1990 season. Mm-hmm. So if you do the math and add the year, was this my 35th? Yeah, it's my 35th season
35
of high school
seasons,
football.
Man.
Yeah, 35th season.
This is, obviously you put together with Todd, John Burton, the entire staff. It's the best coverage of high school sports in South Carolina. I'm not waiting for the official ratings to come in because we know that.
Oh, you're very kind.
But let me know about when you first came in here and you're dealing with a large land area. There was an expectation for the kind of show you were expected to deliver, wasn't there?
There was, and I had the benefit of being in either Florence, Myrtle Beach, or Clarksburg, West Virginia in the 5 years before that. And I always get a kick out of the fact when I got to Clarksburg, West Virginia, the station I was at had just kind of, audited high school football, maybe 1 or 2 games on a Friday night. And the station across town, they went out and they got a whopping 5 or 6 in the first week. And I was literally there for just one season. But the first week I was there, I think we went out and got 10 games. And, reports from across town were like, oh, my God, what's this, who's this nut job that's landed at this TV station? So I had the benefit of that. And then back in Florence, having done it as a weekend guy and been a part of that in my first stint for then roughly 4 football seasons in Florence. Different, big mass, big area, flat, or, elevating hills, not some windy, curvy back roads like we have in our parts. But so I kind of at least had the ramp up to come up here. But I knew that, there had been a great buildup. A gentleman who we know quite well, Stan Olenek, had done a wonderful job from the mid-'70s into the late '80s at this station. Then he went to our competitor and was there for 3 years and did a nice job there as well. So I knew the bar, and then you and others who had been here before I got here had obviously kept the bar very high.
So how many games now are you doing on a weekly basis?
In terms of each Friday show that we do? Each
Friday show, yeah.
Usually, and so for folks who may not be familiar with it, we basically do an hour between 11 and midnight, covering the likes of the West Side Rams, and that quarterback you see is now at South Carolina. And we do, so on the Channel 7 show, they hit me at about 11:13. I go to 11:35. We have 3 segments. I have found that 22 games, between 20 and 22 games is the magic number on that show. But we have more games that we need to cover each week. So we usually are covering between 23 and 26 games. Early in the season, we run into something called half games, in which we have an area team playing a non-area team. And the bummer about that is that takes up the space of one game, but we only care about one team. So we love it when area teams play area teams. But generally speaking, what I will do is I've actually shrunk it down to 20 games that we show just on the Channel 7 show until 11:35. Then from 11:35 to roughly 12:05, we're on the CW 62. And that's when all 25 or 26 games that we've covered that night, we will show highlights of those. Everything we do on the air finds its way to WSPA.com, our website. And on the 11:35 show, we do it, some of the games we do differently. We cover them differently on the 11:35 than we did on the 11. They're the major games of the night. So that's just kind of the general overview.
So when you are doing, putting together every week, I think Sunday before the 4 p.m. NFL games kicked off, you're doing the whole general pattern. You've got your team of photographers that's going to go out, and you've determined the best runs to try to, get them to 2 or 3 or 1 game, depending on the size of it. So how does the strategy session work?
So I get up Sunday morning, or sometimes I don't go to bed Saturday night because of other things going on. Go to church usually. Sometimes that's where I get my sleep in, and not at church. I just may not be able to go to church. The point is, in a typical week in the fall, go to church with the wife, we go to lunch, then I get home and I get in my office at home, because in this world of VPNs and all that, I can, it's like I'm sitting in my office. And pretty much spending the rest of the afternoon into the evening putting the high school show together, and that begins with breaking down. So I've already made a weekly schedule of our area games on each side of the state line, so I've got that all set to go for the season. And then I will go through what 25 or so games we'll cover, kind of having a rough idea, because when I've wrapped up on Friday night, I kind of look to see what's ahead. And I've often mentioned, hey, Gaffney's playing Dorman this week, and, it's the start of a grinder because they've got Spartanburg next week, then Burns or whatever. And then the photographers who are involved will get an email from me. Sometimes if I've got time, because the game I'm doing on a Saturday is not until night, a college game I'm calling somewhere else, or a show we put together that we distribute Sunday that airs on our channel on Mondays, College Sports Extra. Waiting for something else to come in to finish that show, I'll start making the schedule out. So sometimes our photographers, which number between 9 and 12 each week, will get an email from me detailing that. They'll usually get it no later than early Sunday afternoon. I'm an AP poll voter as well. So my Saturday night, that started last year. So my Saturday nights are often very late at night once the West Coast games are done, spent factoring that and getting that turned in by 2 a.m. So anyway, then I start formatting the two different shows. And we do a lot of intricate, we have something we call shot sheets. So picture a piece of paper that each game we do. So if Spartanburg's playing Dorman, I'll have a shot sheet for that, and whoever goes covered it, Todd Summers usually will be the one covering that. He'll write down the different shots that he edits the highlights of, and then I'll have 25 of those that I do on the air. Well, at the top of those, I try to put little tidbits of information. So I'll research those as I'm putting the show together on a Sunday, what the series record is, trends for Spartanburg. They've got a running back, Trenton Lynch, so I'll probably always have a trend for him, how many yards he has in the season, what number he did the week before. I'll try to find some stats if I can. Spartanburg's allowing, because in this era of the internet, I can find the fact that Wade Cooper, the Dorman defensive coordinator, a former Channel 7 employee, by the way, back in the day when he was a floor cameraman, what maybe Dorman did in the past 3 years defensively against Burns. So when you see an interception like that, and if I were to show that on those highlights, which I did on that Wednesday night game last year, just before something called Helene came through and they moved their game up, I might even say, that's the third straight week they've had an interception if I can find that. So I have little tidbits. So I'm gathering those on each of the games as well. And so I'm putting all that together. We have a master score sheet, as you can understand, because we're not only covering 25 games, we're doing scores for about 10 or 15 others that involve our area, each side of the state line, North and South Carolina. And putting everything together, go to dinner real quick with the wife, come home, finish up the planning for that. And then on Monday, we'll get into the office, print up all those sheets that I made, put roster. We always have rosters on them, and visiting team on top, home team on the bottom, and get all that ready to go and get everything all set up. So literally by Monday night, we're ready for football to be played. Then as the week goes on, I get everything in place the night before to make sure that the different technical aspects internally with these rundowns we have and editing and all that are ready to go so that we run out there on Friday, because if they could just put 2 more hours into a Friday evening between 6 and really 10:50 p.m. when I've got to do the 10 o'clock sports show on the CW.
Because it's changed a little bit. From my days, I did it 84 to 2001 or 2002. 2001
was your final season, because in March of 2002 you migrated into becoming a serious and trusted newsman.
I try my best.
You've been the most trusted man in the upstate and beyond for many years since.
I continue to try to carry that banner along with me. So, used to have games, they started at 8 o'clock. That was everywhere in South Carolina. And then eventually it squeezed back to 7:30. Although sometimes it feels like a wash, because the 8 o'clock games was in the running the football era, and 7:30 is in the passing era. It's still, the games pretty much end at the same time, right?
Yeah, for the most part, the earliest a game will end is 9:30, 7:30 kick, and 2 running teams are at halftime by 8:25, 8:30. Usually, though, we've got games that go till 10, and then some of these tight games that go down to the wire go overtime and so forth. Yeah, we've got folks scrambling. But in this era of being able to take a laptop with you and edit your video on that sitting right there in your car at the site, that's a big help. That's changed things. Interesting you should say, because, yes, from the time I got to South Carolina in 85 until right around late 90s, we were 8 o'clock games. And the old Union High held out. They were doing 8 o'clock games forever.
Yeah.
And that was based on basically the work schedule of folks in town. For the home games, they wanted them to be able to get done. So it was when the old Jonesville High was open, oftentimes on a Friday, I would hit Jonesville at 7:30. They were really good. I'd get 2 touchdowns for them and know they were going to win the game, be out of there by 7:45. Union for kickoff at 8. Late 90s, early 2000s, Union had some of the greatest teams you could ever find.
Right.
Be in and out of there by 8:15, usually with 2 scores. And then I'd usually hit a game in Spartanburg on my way back into the office. That has changed since, and I can indulge you with the route I usually do, the nickname I've given it in a moment. But I also want to point out the following. So you and I used to lament the fact, why do these games start at 8? Because they're not getting done. And they'd get done by 10 because they were running. Mm-hmm. I'm convinced that one of the reasons they switched, and it was right around the turn of the century they switched. In 1999, Rich Rodriguez arrived as the offensive coordinator at Clemson.
Right.
In 2000, because we preview roughly 55 area teams, been doing that the whole time, every 3A coach, and back then you only had 4 classifications with split 4A. Mm-hmm. Every 3A coach, with the exception of Clinton, which was going to steadfast stay with running the ball. Yep. Every 3A coach, I kid you not, said, well, so, what are you doing on offense this year? Well, we went over to Clemson and we studied them. We're going to spread it out. Everyone wants to spread offense. And it's like, you've got to start these games earlier, which is a benefit because it gets them done earlier, which is tough, though, because I'm usually leaving the station in Spartanburg at about 6:45 trying to get over to an area of Greenville. Mm-hmm. And now I-85 being what it is, I would benefit from an 8 o'clock start. But I digress.
And, of course, anybody who's ever been one of your photographers at one point or another has heard the term when they see that they have to make a run from, say, Pickens to
Easily.
We've heard the phrase, only you can pull this off.
That's true. And also, I thought you were going to say, look for the lights. So,
see, that's the other one.
Yeah.
That's the other one. Pete's directions to football stadiums always got you right in the general area. Then it was always look for the lights. But GPS has kind of ruined that. It
has ruined it. But at the same time, it always fascinated me when Dom Capers and the Panthers first got to Spartanburg. Mm-hmm. And one of the ways they set up their Wofford complex was to limit the steps the players had to take from the meal hall to the meeting rooms, whatever. And I always try to limit the steps of people who go and cover these games from where they park their car to where they walk in. And since I've literally been to every high school stadium in the area and either have been there on a game day or at least been there to shoot a preview story and have studied the intricacies of, hey, pull down here, the little nice person, the yellow windbreaker will let you through because you want to park right behind the field house in the end zone. That way you can enter this gate, shoot from the visiting sideline because the home backdrop looks better. Plus, it's quicker to get there than it is the parking lot, and you're going to need to be in and out of there because you've got to get there. But part of my Sunday preparation to this day, and I've tried to adjust to the GPS era, but it does include very intricate directions, especially once you get to the stadium area. Because I say look for the lights as you're approaching as a confidence builder. I would never just rely on that. But it literally will tell them where to turn. There's one stadium in the area that has a small little ATM parking lot that's a quick cut through to get you to where, as opposed to going up and turning in the traditional entry. But I try to give every conceivable backdoor way into these stadiums to get people in and out quickly, because the key is being there to shoot the best football we can.
That's right. And getting to edit in the parking lot versus trying to beat the crowd out to get back to Spartanburg or Greenville.
Yes.
Back in the old days. All right. We got much more with Pete. We're going to play a little rapid fire. That's straight ahead as Fred the Show rolls on. Back now with Pete Yanity. We're talking about tales of the high school red zone. Mm-hmm. Okay, rapid fire time. I'm going to participate as well on this one.
Okay.
So, you can tell some stories, but relatively quick. Who is the best high school football player you've ever seen in person or through a camera lens?
Best one I ever covered. The top 2 are both last name Davis, not related. Stephen Davis, Spartanburg, early 90s. Dexter Davis, Sumter, late 80s. When I was over in the Florence market, we covered Sumter.
I remember. My same is Stephen Davis as well. I've never seen anything that big move that fast that didn't have an engine on it. Did he score 5 touchdowns and a half against Dorman in a game?
Probably.
Something like that.
There was something like that. But every game that 1991 was my first full season here.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the year Spartanburg went 14-1. They might have gone 13-1. They might have only played 14 games. The point is they only lost one game. But it seemed like every game, and I covered a lot of the Spartanburg games that year because they were going to be blowouts. And I'll usually go to games myself that are not the key game of the night because I've got to get back in the station and I have others go cover the key game. But I'll never forget going to Spartanburg games and literally on their first series, they'd get the ball at about their own 35. They might run him left a couple of yards. They might run him right a couple of yards. It was usually 3rd down and 6. They'd pitch it to him at about their own 43 or whatever. Those choppy steps, he'd tiptoe, find a hole in the right, take off, and the next thing you knew, this huge kid looked like a bunch of little kids were running after him. And that's how they started seemingly every game. But they went 13-1. They only lost one game that year. They beat Union 20-6, but Stephen Davis came off in the second half with his shoulder pads off. He had a shoulder injury. The next week they played at Northwestern. They lost 39-38 without him playing. Mm-hmm. He got back to the lineup the following week, and they waltzed on to their first ever state title. They beat a good Sumter team in the championship game.
There you go. There you go. You and Beret, you guys were walking the Googles. All right. Best stadium, past or present, you've ever worked a game?
The first one that really wowed me was in Manning, South Carolina, right off I-95, the bottom of my market in Florence, because they were the first stadium that I remember in South Carolina that really built this elegant place that had wrought iron fencing. It was really nice. Dorman's absolutely dropped my jaw when I first walked into there in the 2002 season, having covered the very final football game at their old stadium at the end of 2001. It was Thanksgiving Friday when Burns lost 17-14 to Conway in a game they didn't have to play.
He's working without notes, people.
But I'll never forget it, and my poor folks who I had shooting that game just were up on the press box, but it was a cold driving rain. Burns lost by 3 to Conway with Anthony Johnson as the quarterback, and Bobby Bentley will probably tell you that's one of the top 2 quarterbacks he's ever had. Mm-hmm. And then that same night across town, Spartanburg beat Rock Hill at Gibbs Stadium, and I was covering the Northwestern Dorman game. And I literally put a plastic bag like you'd go out and put leaves in over myself, made a hole so I could shoot a camera through there in this driving cold rain. And I think Northwestern won the game like 28-0. Anyway, I say that because Dorman's original stadium at their school on 29, it was a nice stadium.
It was
but
okay.
I shot the last game there, and then I went and covered the first game at the new Dorman Stadium, and my jaw dropped. We've got a lot of great stadiums in the area. Spartanburg and Gaffney are 2 of my favorites. The new one at Burns will be nice. There are a lot of great ones, but just walking into that stadium and thinking, my goodness, this is a mid-major college stadium.
There were some palaces, but I still love the old Gaffney reservation.
Oh, wow.
You walked in through that tunnel, and people were straight up. Now, it was open across the way, so it wasn't claustrophobic.
Yeah.
But when you looked at the home side, they were straight up and down. All right. Favorite coach, past or present, to interview?
Wow. So many. And so many coaches. I'd go do an interview with them, either preseason or during the season. I might be the one who runs out and get it. And the interviews were fine. It was the 45-minute conversations after the interviews in which we talked about a variety of topics, either our past or whatever. Right. Some of the great guys I ever interviewed that gave me great sound bites. A guy named Alan Sitterly, who coached at Spartanburg, then at Daniel. He was a soundbite machine, and he just was a great guy to talk to. I loved covering Coach Sitterly. I remember Joe Montgomery well at Gaffney. He had a very interesting demeanor about him. He arrived in this market around the time that I did, won 2 state titles at Gaffney.
Came from Florida? Came
from down in the Lake City, Florida area. He'd also been in Pensacola, and the stories he told me about the backroom deals in Pensacola, Florida. But Joe Montgomery is one of the few coaches. He won a state title in 92, won another one in 97, had the best high school quarterback I've ever covered for that 97 win, Kentrell Jones.
Yeah.
But in 93, he's one of the few coaches ever to be involved in and come up on the short end of a 2-0 state championship loss when he told his punter if they had a great goal line stand on a rainy day in Death Valley in the Big 16 title game against Northwestern. They get a great goal line stand in the second quarter, scoreless game. They get the ball. They're literally taking the ball on their own 1, running up the middle a couple of times. And now they got a punt. And Charles Palmer was their punter, and he was coach, look, just take it, walk out of the end zone. We'll give them the 2 points. I'd rather do that than give this really good Northwestern team 7, and that held up. Back in 88, Gaffney had lost to Spring Valley 3-0. So they have 2 state championship losses by a total of 5 points.
I remember that other one. That's
3-0 and 2-0.
Okay, have you ever had a forced conversation with a member of law enforcement, either on your way to or between football games?
Yes, I have. In fact,
You don't have to go to the details.
I've had many gracious conversations with our members of our law enforcement community in various locations, be it at the side of the road or at the various games. Favorite moment of all time. A buddy of mine from college who was having a hard time getting the business, and we were both 3 or 4 years out of college at this point, and I was 4 years into the business because I was fortunate to get a job pretty much right out of college. Anyway, I'm the weekday guy. I'm back in Florence. I was in Florence in 2 different stints, 6 months there as a weekend guy, weekday guy in West Virginia for a year, back to Florence. It's like 1988. And we go cover some games over in the Florence-Darlington area. So now I'm hustling to get back to the station. He had come down to visit me for the weekend because he was going to cover with a crew a South Carolina game on that Saturday so he could do a story for his resume reel that folks are probably familiar with. Yeah. And then I was going to let him on a Sunday because I was going to be in on that Sunday. My weekend guy was out, and so I was going to let him do an anchor segment. So he comes out on a Friday night with me to go to these football games. And we're hustling back through the square in Darlington. And let's just say I didn't run a stop sign, but after pulling away from the stop sign, I may have been going faster than I should through the beautiful square in downtown Darlington. And the racetrack is across town. It's not there.
Okay.
So we get pulled over, and the gentleman happened to recognize I wasn't in a state for whatever reason. I think I was because I had someone who was a non-employee with me. And I get pulled over, and the gentleman understood my story about I'm trying to hustle. I was over in Lamar, then Hartsville, and whatever. Or I was in Hartsville, and then I was over at the Darlington game. Now I'm trying to get back. Okay, well, just slow it down. By the way, you got a Lamar score? And my friend got a big kick out of that.
That's good. That's good.
But, there was another time where 4 cars were pulled over just on a summer day on Highway 301. I was coming back from doing an interview down at the Myrtle Beach Speedway trying to get back to Florence. As I understand it, the other 3 were ticketed. I simply talked to the individual who pulled me over about some of the area high school football prospects, as I'd already been doing some previews.
We've all managed to maybe allude something here and there, but of course the statute of limitations gone on that.
It's all gone on that, yes.
All right, let's move on.
And I'll deny any of this ever happened.
Exactly. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
That show's not on TV, is it? Okay. Let me ask you one last thing.
Yeah.
As far as talking about where we are today, I mean, I covered football 84 to 2001 for the TV station. You're in, pretty much 40 years at this point. How has the game changed? How have the people changed, whether it's the players, the coaches, the fans, or has it that much?
It has changed, and for the obvious things that we see on the field, the coaches were always gracious. You have to realize, so my evolution is I was just this young guy in my 20s going out to cover these coaches in their 40s and 50s, and they were looking at me. But I guess I was so diligent at every year showing up to do interviewing for a preview. They just, I kind of became part of the furniture. The coaches today are more savvy in general. They understand, they get it because their kids are more savvy, and it's all about, there's a lot of me that they've got to kind of contain. The social media thing, it's got to be a thankless job for a coach to try to contain that. As we tape this, there was an alleged incident that involved an area high school recently that's being investigated. In the old days, those probably happened, but no one had a phone. And that's got to be something that I think has hounded a lot of these programs and institutions beyond high school football. The game has changed because the players are a lot smarter, and you're asking quarterbacks on the high school level to do a lot of things with offenses that they maybe weren't doing in the past. And again, the role of the quarterback at every level of football, it was always important in the NFL. It was kind of important in college, more so from an option standpoint, looking back to when you and I were growing up. Yeah. But now you've got to be able to read defenses like I don't think quarterbacks in the day maybe had to. And that's just my opinion on that. But, in general, at the end of the day, the high school game is still the high school game. It's a bunch of innocent kids. It's a bunch of coaches who love the game, love to coach, but just felt like that's the level they wanted to do it at, as opposed to going and chasing big money in college. And it's very family oriented. The thing I love about high school football is it really is that great unifier in so many different ways, whether you look at it socially, athletically, from a school standpoint, from a town standpoint. It's a wholesome thing, and it's just, to me, and for a local TV station, again, this is the level I wanted to be at because I didn't want to go away from that. I didn't want to go to some big market and you're just covering a pro team, which is fine or whatever. I love the fact that we are, we can do a show, and that's where you're going to see them. You're not going to turn ESPN on and watch BHP highlights.
Yeah, that's very true. Good point
yes.
there.
And I don't want to intercede on your timing, but I want to give you my geographic little area that I go on Friday nights and why I call it what I call it.
Okay.
So I usually on Friday nights will go to, there's a cluster of 5 schools, and you could say 6 that are very much near each other. Christ Church, St. Joe's, Man, Malden, and Southside Christian. And there have been times I've literally hit 4 games if they're all 4 at home because I can go, whatever.
Sure.
And the games are going to be, again, I go to a game, I can pretty much tell you who's going to win it. So if I get highlights of the team that's going to win, I feel like I've told the story.
Mm-hmm.
I call it the corridor of faith. Because you have the Episcopal, Christ Church Episcopal School, you have the Catholic, St. Joe's. J.L. Mann has had a very good run. They're either the hopeful that they can hang with the big guys or the helpless because they did have a rough run. Malden's had some very good teams, and they've kind of hit a rough patch. So they are also the hopeful or the helpless. That's where their faith may be. And then Southside Christian, a school that is with of the Baptist origin. So you've got the 3 denominational schools plus those 2 others. So I call it the corridor of faith.
Very good.
And they're great folks, and it's great stopping in on Fridays at each of those places.
Those regular places. I want to give you the opportunity to plug coverage away. First of all, the High School Red Zone. Just search WSBA High School Red Zone. Online, you'll find that not only the previews, but all the game highlights, everything like that. And also, you've got your own WSBA Plus shows.
Yes, I do. It's I think they call it All Access, and we interview a lot of folks. Now, we've got a big wave of high school coaches we're doing. About a third of our area coaches we've done interviews with, and as the season goes on, we'll do others. This is in addition to interviewing 50-plus for preview stories that what you were just showing. So we just did long-form interviews, and I thought it'd be interesting to get the different coaches that folks have become familiar with their high schools to kind of tell about their background. Like, when did the itch to coach begin? What was your journey? Who was in your ear?
I got to cut you off because you've told so many great stories. Even on digital, they run out of time.
I can't believe that.
I know. It blew
Well,
by.
and I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to sit right here.
Just
I'm not
keep there and
exactly.
keep talking away.
Yes.
We'll continue to do that. Pete, best of luck this season. I know you have a great time. Watch for all your highlights right here on 7 News.
Really looking forward to it.
Great. Thanks a lot. And that is Fred the Show. We'll see you next time here on WSBA Plus.